My name is Peter Wallin. I'm head of analytics at Hoist Finance, based out of Sweden. So I also had quite a great game to watch yesterday. I'm here to tell you a little bit of our strategical approach to analytics and how we have embedded this analytics as the core of our strategy to drive efficiency and effectiveness throughout the organization. We seem to be around 60, 70, maybe 80 people in here, and I think all of you agree that data-driven decisioning and analytics is more important than ever in your business strategy. I have been working with strategy for 6 to 8 years, and how it has evolved from being high up on the agenda with the traditional BI, the diagnostic and the descriptive, to becoming the core pillar with the predictive and prescriptive development is quite a journey. I will tell you a little bit of how we have approached that, because as you heard earlier from the keynote before, there is quite a lot of improvements to be done. By the Harvard Business Review that the keynote referred to was also numbers that stated that less than 50% of all structured data in the businesses today is used for decisioning. Less than 1% of all unstructured data is used today. So the expectations, especially if I talk and look back within my organization, to use that data and the potential that we see around with all the talks about AI and machine learning, maybe it's not fitting where many organizations are. I think there is quite a gap to bridge, and to the point that 80% of the time is spent on analytics. We have an internal review of that. We made an approximation, and we used to be around 80 to 90% 3 years ago when we started this journey. So I'm here to tell you our approach, and I will start with a little bit of a backdrop. And I will start off from an analytics point of view, actually from my own perspective as an analytical leader at Hoist. So when we started 3 years ago, and those of you who are working within the finance industry, you know that they are not as digitalized as manufacturing and supply chain, but that it has become more and more digitalized over the years. And with that, of course, we generate a lot more data, and the business and all the stakeholders, for that matter, wants to tap into the data and use it more, right? So one of the first thing I had to deal with at my in the first year at Hoist was to come up with a self-service strategy, and I'm coming into that a little bit later. Which involved us moving from being a grinder to an enabler. So what do I mean with that? Basically to use our time better, not to work with so much collecting the data sources, because we had around 50 or 60 different sources of information at that time. We want to move to empower the users with not just providing the tools, but also the know-how how to interpret data. Many of our end users were not used to that at all when we started this journey. Another aspect that I always find quite interesting is the organizational, let's say, change resistance that you might have in your organizations. With digitalization, you remove repetitive work, right? And as such, many organizations are built up around having people to manually work. And when you come in with digitalization and analytics, you kind of take power away from some functions, and that is also an aspect to consider. How do you go from a kind of classic hierarchical structure with the P&L is within the silos to having the IT analytics organization taking more part of the business. And that journey has been quite an interesting one at all the places that I have been involved in doing digital transformation. And when you have to deal with that and come up with the solutions, it can be a little bit like scratching your head. And it's easy then to jump into solutions. And it's easy to look for a technical solution to solve that, and especially when you have all the hype that surrounds you. And I think most of you might be familiar with the Gartner hype cycle, right? Anyone who's not familiar with? Okay. Anyway, I'll do a short intro. So it basically is all about when you have a trigger of innovation or an idea that starts to build momentum, creates expectations with some success stories, and the expectations gradually increase to the peak of inflated expectations, and then as more and more, most likely vendors, tap into the technology, you get not just the success stories but also some failures, and it kind of decreases the expectations, and then you have the maturity tail coming alongside it. So if you are in a business where you have a lot of demands to make data more available, you have a lot of hype around certain technologies, whether it is prescriptive, predictive, big data, what have you, it's hard to maybe resist. And sometimes you also see that the business directors or business leads go in and buy their own systems and maybe increase complexity rather than make your life more simpler. So, and obviously adding cost and making your life more difficult. So these were basically the situation I had to deal with when I came in. We had a lot of different systems, both when it comes to predictive, but also when it comes to data mining and data management, I would say. Now, also taking into consideration our business strategy. So Hoist Finance is a debt purchaser. We have been working with financial institutions since the early 90s. We have grown quite rapidly throughout the last few years. We are present in 11 different jurisdictions today. We are working with most of the pan-European banks. And our mission is to help our customers, the debtors, to become debt-free and to come back into the financial ecosystem. Our market is in a consolidation phase. There used to be 20 players, and there is roughly 10 to 15 key players, and within a few years we expect it to be down to 3 or 4 or 5. So with that said, of course, we have to from an analytical point of view, support that transformation and have a flexible integration of both new system and new markets. So those are kind of the business requirements that are put on us, and then we have an industry that is changing swiftly around us. We have quite a lot of new increased regulations with IFRS 9. Everyone, of course, here has been subject to the GDPR. We see, as all other industries, quite a lot of behavioral changes, customer expectations. What do I mean with that? Believe it or not, we are not that digital when it comes to offering self-service capabilities to our customers, so there is quite a lot of things happening on there, which will, of course, give us greater possibilities to collect data. We have a maturing industry, which decreases the margins. So we are seeing a huge price pressure on the assets that we buy and the profitability that they generate. And then, of course, it's the whole digitalization that, if we don't do it, everyone else will do it, so we kind of have to jump onto the bandwagon as well, whether, even if we believe that to be the future. So how do we make sense of both, the industry that is changing around us, our business strategy, and the users who expect to have access to all the data. So from an analytics perspective, we need users and system needs to get more outputs to drive efficiencies and effectiveness. The whole business that we operate within is built around being productive, right? So we are buying depths, we are collecting on the depths, and we are therefore trying to, of course, have as low cost income or as low cost as possible to the highest income possible. We have, with the acquisitions that we have made, quite a scattered information landscape and system landscape. We have seen a lot of manual work throughout the years, both when it comes to data gathering. We have had poor visibility of quality because it has been done in silo modes. We have, as I said, different operating models and processes within the countries. They are doing the same core business, but they are using different organizations and systems to collect the data. So therefore, it's very hard to make any sense of it from a consolidated perspective. Now, obviously, we're not just looking at the data to drive efficiency. We also want to have some effectiveness. We want to ensure that we're making the right decisions at the right point. So predictive analytics is becoming more and more important to our operations as well. And we need to be able to manage that. We need to be able to cater for that and ensure that we manage our IP that these models belong to. And then, of course, we have to do everything in a transparent manner. Obviously, being a financial institution, we are monitored by Swedish IFRS and so on and so forth. So, or the Swedish Financial Institution. So, a lot of challenges from an analytical perspective. So what did we start off with? We started to look what is it that makes us profitable at the end. And I already started by saying that it's to improve our processes, to drive efficiency and quality in our processes, and with that ensure that we get all the data that we desire to be able to monitor and improve them. So we have throughout the last 2 years defined an operational excellence system. It's built around process management, performance management, and change management. Because, as I said, a lot of the digitalization drives a lot of changes in terms of how and what people work with, right? So it's a lot of people management within that. So we approach change from process, performance, and change management, and then we have, since 2 years ago, started the implementation of a new warehouse and a complete new analytical platform. And then we are, as I mentioned, looking into the advanced analytics field to spearhead some of the initiatives that we are having on our strategic roadmap. So it's basically drive operational excellence from within, continuous improvements, a complete new warehouse and analytical platform, and advanced analytics and digitalization. So that is the Hoist finance strategy. Now, when it comes to the starting point, even though we obviously it takes time to implement a warehouse and a new analytical platform, we had to already make the data available from day one. So we engaged with Tableau. We started to have quite a huge uptake, several hundred users jumping onto the platform, and obviously that drove some more requirements to be able to start to work with data prep and data blending. And back then, this is 2016, I was directed, or they pointed me towards Alteryx. So we started to explore Alteryx, and at the same time I had questions about, okay, what should I do with the predictive platform? Should I go for SAS? Should I go for RapidMiner, or how should we approach that? And how do I build a common platform where we can cater for all these models and share and learn from each other. So by having a few desktop Alteryx licenses first, we quickly moved into the server setup, and that resulted in that we now are working with both Tableau and Alteryx Server as our analytical platform. And this is basically how we are structured today. We have pointer doesn't work. We have our new warehouse with a traditional ETL coming from all the core system, our financial system, our FTE system, our collection system. And then we have what we call a semantic layer where we have the cubes and the SQL views, and where we have now also our self-service platform, which is from a analyst perspective, the Alteryx Server, where we build all our workflows and where we create all our models, and I'm going to come back to that a little bit later. And then we have the front-end capabilities where we have the cubes, and then we have the presentation layers where we use Tableau Server, and I think obviously Excel is still around to a certain part, but we have more and more in Tableau. SSRS we're using more for daily work lists within the production area. Around this we have the end users, which is of course quite Tableau heavy focused, and then we have our analysts, our data scientists, our citizen data scientists that obviously use reports, but of course also do a lot of self-service through the Alteryx. And then, as important, we have data stewards that are maintaining and updating all master data and all data that we are not able to retrieve from a systematic point of view from our core systems. So this is what we are implementing and have been done for the last 2 years throughout all jurisdictions. And worth mentioning is of course that we have other sources when we're doing investments and looking at new potential assets. We have different various data sources that we blend into our Alteryx Server environment to work with our in-house data. And of course we have different SLAs on data quality and data governance within the different sources. If I zoom in a little bit on the Alteryx platform and the predictive capabilities that we are using or building within there. Obviously we are using it for, as I said earlier, for let's say traditional ETL purposes when we have new data sources and data feeds that we want to quickly get our hands on. But it has become also our system for running all predictive models, and that might be for forecasting of predictions of our future collections. It might be for potential pricings of new investments, and so on and so forth. And we are in 11 different jurisdictions, and we have of course different assets to price. We have different historical ways of looking at those assets, and now with the Alteryx Server we are finally coming into a place where we can build algorithms and keep them in a repository, so we of course can reuse them. And we also get quite good traceability because we save all the workflows, so we can rerun them, and we can, for audit purposes, we can open them up back again and see who did what at what time. So we have complete traceability even though we have accelerated the self-service. And before we were running on SQL Server, Excel, and some other systems. It could take quite a few days to get one iteration through, to test one hypothesis on how to price and how to forecast. But I think the biggest advantage so far with this is that we have quite a lot of agility, because it takes minutes to rerun the scenario and test it rather than days before. And then the idea is that we then of course reuse and share to also within the analytical forum reuse or limit people to on one hand duplicate effort, but also that we keep the data quality and understanding of what is going on in one place. Let's see if this now works. This is, for those of you who know Alteryx, this is the designer software where you basically build your workflows, and we're zooming in here on one of the macros, which is basically the R code that we build internally, which is then the actual model, right? And I think we're going to zoom out here soon. Around that, of course, we use a lot of data cleaning and data blending built-in features from Alteryx. And then additionally, we have an area where we build the user interface for the citizen data scientists to run the model from the server, so that they easily can execute the model whenever they want to from the server. So this is how it looks, very simple UI from the Alteryx Server when we want to execute one of the workflows. So you basically fill in the parameters that you're able to adjust, and this is a very simple forecasting. And then it automatically deploys the output to the to the Tableau server, in which you obviously can browse the reports as you want to. And now we have neutralized and anonymized all the data here, but it's basically 6 different segments of within the portfolio that we are looking at and predicting the potential cash that we could collect over the years. And we use this not just for forecasting, but also for all our predictive use cases that we have. And as I said then, so the analyst creates the model, we upload it to the server, and the end user accesses the server, and then we append it to the Tableau data source. And it's also possible to store directly in the SQL database. And today I would say we have 40 to 50% of our models running in these workflows. Has it been an easy journey? I think there is improvement potential, of course, here. But in terms of getting to the end result, I think we're on a good way. Now, some of these workflows can be quite complicated, and what we have experienced is, of course, that you have to know you have to understand the strength of the Alteryx tools itself and the data blending and the data prep built-in functionality. So we have over the 1.5 year that we have done work on the server, of course, learned how to improve this, and now we are strictly using the macros for the R coding, and everything that has to do with data prep and blending is solely done in the optimized controls of Alteryx. So what we're looking at here is basically our workflow for our financial ECL modeling of provisioning. So this has replaced quite a pricey commercial product on the market. Now, this is run once a month, basically, per portfolio that is subject to these requirements. So it's, of course, it's manageable. And then just to kind of come back to where I started about driving performance improvements or driving efficiency and effectiveness through analytics. We are becoming more and more data-driven by the minute, and we take the starting point from always looking at our processes. So we have for our different management, country management, department management, business unit management, various dashboards for them to, in a fact-based view, understand how they are performing. So we defined all the operational KPIs. We have all the forecasting models that I talked about to see what targets they should hit. And then if you drill down, obviously having the same data model, the taxonomy, and the warehouse underneath, you drill down into your department dashboards, team dashboards, and then of course you, with the help of Tableau and to some part Alteryx, you do your self-service analytics. Important aspect is, of course, also to mention that when we find something, we always have to take action, right? So from a improvement point of view, we have a dashboard now where we actually have integrated spreadsheets to kind of map initiatives, improvement initiatives to the dashboards to also see when they were implemented, to see if we get the desired effect. And then, of course, these should feed back into the overall dashboard as we aggregate everything upwards. So are we there yet? In some countries we are, but it's still a journey to go in some of the others, because we obviously, as I said, have a lot of different data sources to cover, and we are maybe 50 to 60% through this transformation. What we're also looking at is optimization. And what we used to, when it comes to optimization, in a sense of how we approach the depths, the portfolios, and the customers, what strategy basically we pursue. And we used to be quite focused on segmentation and profiling. So we segment the customers and the depths, and then we take actions on a very high level. We moved into having a little bit more sophisticated with scorecards in some areas. And then, we move into the predictive area. And then we maybe take a little bit more sophisticated scorecards with some more dimensions, but we still apply some judgmental decisions that we decide at the end of the day, should we act or should we not act according to this, or should we shift the contact strategy in this country, or should we send letters, should we not send letters, and so on, based on judgmental decisions. Where I think we need to come to, and where a lot of focus will lie within our business in the future, is to have custom decision outcomes driven from optimization, prescriptive analytics, basically, where we define what we want to achieve and what the constraints are, and then we let the system generate the strategies on our behalf, rather than that we having any judgmental decisions. That way we can target our customers in a more granular way, and we have basically no manual intervention whatsoever. Is our current platform sufficient to support that? I would say yes and no. We have a few considerations. As I mentioned, the bigger workflows that we are developing on the predictive, including predictive modeling on Alteryx, is sufficient when you run it not too frequent. But if you want to go into the real-time deployment, into real-time, and take the decisions, a couple of hundreds of thousands by the hour, you need to have a more sophisticated way of deploying them. I mean, it could either be that you compile the code into a .NET stack or Java stack, what have you. But then there are also products that you might want to use, of course, and I think Alteryx are working on a few themselves. Another learning is that when you involve any kind of machine learning or self-learning capabilities within this, it can quickly become quite sensitive to disturbances in data. So if you are deploying a model with some learning capabilities, you have to think about how often do you want it to learn and how often do you want to redeploy it. It can be quite sensitive to disturbing data if you're not careful. And then, the hype around machine learning and the technology. Everyone, including ourselves, have been running on a few of these use cases, but does it really always make a difference? I would say in some places yes, but in others where you have limited data and mostly just structured data, we haven't seen the benefit yet so far. So what have we achieved? Well, as I said, we have worked quite manually before within the analytical processes as well. And now we are semi-automated. It's not flawless, but it works, and we are getting to the desired outcomes that we want to. And above all, we have control of the data now. We know who took what action. We know the source of the data points. Before, we had a lot of data duplication and limited transparency into what actually the data were coming from. We didn't react to changes within the core system that could be quite good to understand if you make if you're making quite big investment decisions upon data. We are collaborating much more now throughout jurisdictions. Those of you who work within global jurisdictions knows that there is often and always some collaboration barriers between local jurisdictions and group. And I think the technology that we have at our hand is bridging that quite well. We have had a lot of time-consuming and repeatable work. And as I said before, we are now reusing the features, and we are doing it quite rapidly, meaning that we can spend our time more on the analytical part than building workflows and collecting data. And I think within operations as such, a lot of the people who worked there before acted on gut feeling, but now they had quite a lot of good insights into the actual data, and they have, with that especially, and this is coming from the people themselves, that it's much easier to make decisions now when they have something to fall back on and fact-based data to look at. I think the last but not least, we are able now to really leverage scale due to the collaboration platform. But above all, we have good control of the models. Before, they could be with an analyst on his local client, on his laptop, and then he goes to a competitor, and then our IP or the model goes with it. So, and then of course the audit trails for all the FSAs around the countries that we are subject to. We have quite good traceability, and I say quite, since we're not fully implemented in all countries yet. But this is basically where we're as far as we got in the last 18 months. It's not the technology that I struggle with implementing this. It's all the resistance within the organization. Everyone has been a little bit, what happens to my job? Where am I? Where am I in all this? And it's about telling the story that if we come together, everyone can focus on really cool stuff. And you can get away from being a data collector to actually being the analyst that you were hired to be. So I think it's quickly, it's turning, but the technology is not the challenge. It's really to get the people behind you and tell the why story. With that said, the only thing that I didn't agree to with the keynote speakers before was their predictions on Saturday. But let's see, huh? Thank you.